What if a housemaid shocked a billionaire and saved his company overnight? This powerful story will inspire you. Comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe. The billionaire laughed smugly. Translate this, and I'll give you my monthly salary, he said, tossing the thick packet of paper across the room. The pages slid to a halt at the feet of Mia Delgado, who stooped to pick them up silently. The room roared with laughter. It echoed off the walnut-paneled walls of Jackson Remington's private library. The tech tycoon was entertaining his closest board members that evening. Wine flowed, cigars glowed, and billion-dollar deals were casually tossed into conversation like poker chips. This little stunt, however, was meant purely for their amusement. Mia stood still, her face unreadable. After 2 decades of working in the Remington household, she had mastered the art of invisibility. But something about tonight stirred something deeper. The insult didn't sting, it ignited. "I'm serious, Mia," Jackson grinned, wiping a tear from his cheek. "Just got this new partnership contract in from our friends in Shenzhen. Even the pros are struggling with it. If you manage to translate it by 9 a.m., I'll give you my monthly pay, just north of 400 grand. The laughter that followed was full of mockery, not mischief. Around the sleek marble coffee table, 3 executives sipped their scotch and chuckled. "Jackson, you're terrible," said Victoria Lang, the company's CFO, shaking her head with a smirk. "Don't bully the help." Mia looked down at the document in her hands. It was entirely in Mandarin. Not just the language, but the form. Dense legalese wrapped in layers of technical jargon. Embedded diagrams, marginal annotations, the kind of thing even seasoned translators needed days to handle. Her grip tightened, but not from fear, from something else. Resentment, maybe, or resolve. "Tomorrow morning, 9 sharp, Jackson said, waving her off like a waiter. "Unless you're returning it early. No shame in knowing your limits." The chandelier overhead caught the glint of his diamond cufflinks as he poured himself more bourbon. "Will there be anything else this evening, Mr. Remington?" Mia asked calmly. "No, that'll be all," he said. "Make sure the liquor's stocked. We'll be up late." Without a word, she turned and left, the heavy door closing behind her with a soft finality. The sounds of the party dimmed behind her as she made her way down the plush hallway. Her shoes made no sound on the thick carpet, the same carpet she suspected. That cost more than her annual salary. In the quiet of the kitchen, Mia laid the document flat on the countertop. She stared at it for a long moment. She had spent most of her adult life in this house, raising Jackson's children, caring for his ailing wife until she passed, running the home so well it functioned like a luxury hotel. Yet to Jackson, she was still just a fixture, something that blended into the background. She took out her phone and snapped a photo of the contract. Then typed a short message. "It's me. I need a favor. It's urgent." She spent the next hour making sure the kitchen was spotless and the bar stocked as instructed. Once everything was in order, she quietly exited the estate and drove her aging sedan to her small apartment in the south end of the city. The complex was quiet, but not asleep. Porch lights glowed, TV screens flickered behind curtained windows. In her building, families lived paycheck to paycheck. No one here could afford the luxury of early nights or weekend rest. Inside her modest 1-bedroom unit, Mia changed out of her uniform and walked to the small desk tucked beside her bookshelf. She sat down, opened her laptop, and began typing an email. Subject: Urgent translation request. To Professor Sam Lin. Dear Professor Lin, I hope this message finds you well. Apologies for the late hour, but I've come across a document that requires urgent attention. It's in Mandarin and highly technical. I would appreciate any guidance you can offer. Warm regards, Mia Delgado. She attached the photo and hit send. Then she stood and crossed the room to her bookshelf. Hidden behind a row of old mystery novels was a leather-bound journal. She pulled it free and opened it carefully. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, a blend of languages, character sets, diagrams, annotations, her secret, her history. Because what Jackson Remington didn't know, what none of her employers had ever cared enough to ask, was that Mia Delgado was once Dr. Maria Delgado, an expert in East Asian linguistics, specializing in Mandarin technical translation. Back in her home country, She had taught at one of the top universities. But after the political uprisings turned violent, academics became targets. She had fled with nothing, not even her diplomas. Her phone buzzed. 2:17 a.m. Sam Lin. Just saw your email. Fascinating stuff. This looks like a quantum hardware contract. Very specialized terminology. Want me to flag anything? Mia smiled faintly. Mia. That would be great. I'll take care of the rest. She sat back down and got to work. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, her eyes scanning the Chinese characters with growing clarity. At first, her skills were rusty. The terms didn't come as fluidly as before. But with each line, her fluency returned. The document was dense, layered, and buried within its polished legalese were alarming clauses. Phrases that, if left unchecked, would hand Remington Global's proprietary data infrastructure to their overseas partner. One clause would effectively shift control of all co-developed intellectual property. By dawn, she had completed the translation. She printed it, along with a second document, one highlighting the hidden dangers, annotated with explanations in plain English. She had just enough time to shower, change, and catch 2 hours of sleep before it was time to return for her 7 a.m. shift. By the time Jackson and his guests emerged from their suites, hungover and clutching coffee, Mia was already cleaning the breakfast bar. Mia, Jackson called lazily. Hope you enjoyed our little game last night. You can go ahead and hand that back now. She turned. I've completed the translation, Mr. Remington. Jackson paused, his cup halfway to his mouth. I'm sorry, what? The contract, she said, retrieving a folder from her tote. It's translated. I also flagged sections that may pose legal and security concerns. She walked over to the table and laid the folder before him. The room fell silent. The other executives looked up, expressions shifting from disinterest to disbelief. Jackson's smile faltered. You're telling me, you translated that thing overnight? Yes, sir. And annotated it? Yes. I thought it was important. He stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. Slowly, he opened the folder and began flipping through the pages. The silence deepened. On page 3, she pointed to a clause. This section gives your partners unrestricted access to internal system protocols. And here, she turned the page. This hands over any jointly developed technologies to their subsidiary in Shenzhen. Jackson's face turned pale. His executives looked at each other, shocked. Jackson stared at the document as if it had just spoken to him. His hand, still holding the coffee cup, hovered midair before slowly lowering to the table. The room that had been full of laughter the night before now felt like a vacuum, silent, tense, fragile. He flipped through the translated pages, each one annotated neatly with concerns that none of his legal team had flagged. Mia stood quietly, her hands folded, her uniform crisp, her face composed. This is real? He muttered, his voice barely audible. Yes, sir, Mia replied calmly. The language is precise, but deliberately misleading, if no one fluent in both Mandarin and technical terminology had reviewed it. The implications would have slipped through unnoticed. Victoria Lang, the CFO, snatched the folder from Jackson and started scanning it herself. She's right, she said, her brows knitting. These clauses are buried, but they would have handed over key IP rights and compromised our security backbone. How the hell did our legal team miss this? Jackson asked, more to himself than anyone else. Mia answered quietly, because most legal teams don't read Mandarin at a technical level. They rely on summaries. The partner firm likely expected that. Jackson's chair screeched as he stood up so fast it toppled over. Everyone out, he barked. Not you, Mia. The executives didn't argue. Victoria clutched the translated document like a shield as she exited. Jackson waited until the heavy door clicked shut before pacing the room in silence. 1 minute passed, 2, then he stopped, staring at Mia with an expression she couldn't quite place. Why didn't you ever say anything? You never asked, Mr. Remington. Jackson swallowed hard. 20 years. You've been in this house for 20 years. Raising my kids, managing the home, taking care of everything, and I never knew. Mia didn't respond. The truth didn't need to be repeated. How much do I pay you? He asked suddenly. $52,000 a year. Plus health insurance. Jackson looked like he'd been slapped. That's all? Mia nodded. He sat back down, the weight of the morning bearing down on his shoulders. You just saved this company from a disaster that could have cost us billions. And you still showed up this morning to cook us breakfast. Mia's voice remained steady. What happens to Remington Global affects a lot of people, including me. I work here. Jackson's expression softened for the first time. He looked at her differently now, not as a fixture in the background, but as a person with dimensions he had never cared to see. Where are you from? He asked. Venezuela. I was a professor at the Central University of Caracas before the regime change. Jackson nodded slowly. And I'm guessing your degrees didn't transfer over? No. And I didn't have time to start over. I had to get out quickly. Some of my colleagues weren't so lucky. He rubbed his hands together. My late wife, she was the one who hired you, wasn't she? Yes. She was kind. Jackson stared into space for a long moment. Margaret always did see what I didn't. Then he looked back at her, his expression full of regret. That joke, the salary thing, that was cruel. I understood, Mia said, not unkindly. It wasn't personal. But it was, he said. It was a way to remind you of your place. And to remind everyone else that they had a place too. Silence lingered between them again. This time heavier, more meaningful. I became someone I never wanted to be, Jackson admitted. Arrogant, oblivious, blind to people who didn't wear $1,000 suits. Mia said nothing. She knew this wasn't the kind of moment that needed interruption. Jackson stood abruptly. The deal's a deal, he said, walking over to his desk. $400,000. That's what I promised. That's not necessary, sir. It's Jackson, he corrected gently. And yes, it is. He opened a drawer, pulled out his checkbook, and started writing. This isn't charity, he said as he scribbled. You protected everything I've built. Everything hundreds of employees depend on. Our cybersecurity team is going to be in emergency meetings for weeks thanks to what you uncovered. Mia watched him slide the check across the table. Her fingers hovered over it before picking it up. The weight of what it could do for her family flashed through her mind. Her nephew's medical school dreams. Her sister's struggling clinic. Her own long-delayed stability. Jackson exhaled and sat down again. There's something else, he said. I want to offer you a different role, something more fitting. Mia looked up, brows raised. Our international division needs someone who can read between the lines. You'd work with our legal and partnerships teams, quietly. We can structure it as a private contractor position if that's what you prefer. She was silent for a moment, considering it carefully. I'd need certain guarantees. Name them. Anonymity, flexible hours, and, she paused, then added firmly, respect. No more jokes at the expense of staff. Jackson flushed. You have my word, and I understand that trust will take time. Mia folded the check and tucked it into her pocket. I'll finish my duties for the day. He nodded, stepping aside. Mia, I'm sorry for everything. She offered a small nod and left the room. Her posture unchanged, but everything else about her already beginning to shift. 3 months later, the top floor of Remington Tower was quiet. Behind a frosted glass door, Mia Delgado sat at a large desk, reviewing a newly drafted partnership agreement with a South Korean quantum tech firm. The office was hers, modest but well-equipped. 7 different language dictionaries lined the shelf behind her. A sleek laptop hummed on her desk as she typed corrections into the document. She wore a simple black blouse and slacks. Her uniform was long gone. A soft knock at the door broke her focus. Jackson stepped in, 2 coffee cups in hand. Got it just how you like it, he said, setting one down. She smiled faintly, accepting it. The Singapore deal's moving ahead, he added, thanks to the revisions you made. The board was thoroughly impressed. Mia nodded, glad to hear it. He looked around the office. You settling in okay? I prefer to stay under the radar, she replied. I figured, he said with a grin. Then he placed a small, wrapped box on her desk. Open it when you have a second. Mia waited until he left. Then she opened the package slowly. Inside was a nameplate. Dr. Maria Delgado, Director of International Linguistics and Cultural Affairs. Beneath it was a handwritten note. Your choice whether to use this. Either way, you are seen now. Mia ran her fingers over the engraved letters. Her long unused title finally visible once more. She didn't place the nameplate on the door just yet. But she smiled. The choice was hers now. The morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the Remington Tower's executive floor, casting soft gold on the freshly polished floors. Mia Delgado stood at the window of her office, coffee in hand, staring out at the skyline she once only glimpsed while walking to the bus stop before dawn. Now, the city looked different, like something she could touch, something that finally saw her. Behind her, the screen glowed with an encrypted video call waiting to be accepted. She took a sip, exhaled, and clicked join. A group of international partners from Tokyo, Geneva, and Toronto appeared, each one nodding in greeting. Jackson's voice came through first. Everyone, this is Dr. Maria Delgado, our lead on international linguistic analysis and cross-cultural legal frameworks. One of the Japanese delegates raised an eyebrow. The same Delgado who caught the cybersecurity breach in the Shenzhen draft. Mia offered a professional nod. That's me. The meeting rolled forward, filled with precision and efficiency. Mia translated legal terminology in real time, clarified clauses that had been misinterpreted in previous versions, and politely, but firmly, negotiated red lines that would have cost Remington Global millions in regulatory risk. By the time the call ended, the overseas partners were visibly impressed. Jackson muted his mic, leaned back in his chair, and smiled. You crushed it. Mia didn't gloat. She never did, but her shoulders relaxed just slightly. After the call, Jackson stopped by her office. You've got a standing ovation in the Slack channel, he said, holding up his phone. She raised an eyebrow. I'm not on Slack. I know, he chuckled, which makes it even funnier. Mia gave him a patient smile. I'm just here to do the job. No, Jackson said, serious now. You're here to help shape the future of this company. And you are. There was a beat of quiet. And then Mia asked, how's Evelyn? Jackson's daughter, now in her first year at Columbia. She's doing great, still can't cook for herself. Burnt toast the other day and called it caramelized bread. Mia chuckled. She misses you, Jackson added. Says the place feels too quiet without your footsteps in the hallway. I miss her too. She's grown up well. Jackson studied her for a second. You helped raise my kids. That was never in your job description. But you did it anyway. You were there more than I was. Mia's smile faded into something gentler. I did it because they needed someone. And because I loved them. And now you're here, Jackson said, not in the background, not invisible. Mia nodded. I'm not trying to be seen, Jackson. I just want my work to matter. It does. He reached into his briefcase and handed her a sealed envelope. She opened it and found a formal contract, title, salary, benefits, security clearance, the works. Jackson cleared his throat. This is just the start. We're building a multilingual intelligence team. You'll lead it. Mia blinked. You want me to hire people? Yes. People like you. Overqualified, underutilized, invisible to the system. We've got blind spots, and you're helping us fix them. Her hands tightened slightly on the folder. She had been the invisible one for so long, and now she was being asked to shine a light on others like her. There's a lot of work to do, she murmured. That's why you're the one to do it. 2 months later, Mia sat across from a candidate in her growing office. A young man, barely in his 20s, nervous, eyes darting from the whiteboard to the floor to his own trembling hands. I know my English isn't perfect, he said softly, but I'm fluent in Farsi, Arabic, and Turkish. I translated for my uncle during the war. Mia smiled, recognizing something in him. You know how to read between the lines. He nodded. That's what matters here, she said. We're not just hiring translators. We're hiring interpreters of culture, context, and complexity. He blinked, unsure what to say. You start Monday, she said, rising to shake his hand. His face lit up. As he left, Mia turned back to her desk, where several folders lay open, each one a potential new hire from overlooked corners of society. Refugees, ex-professors, women forced to pause their careers for caregiving, linguists with no access to certification programs. She was building something, and it was personal. That evening, Jackson hosted a quiet dinner in honor of the team's first major international partnership secured by Mia's division. No reporters, no fanfare, just a private rooftop space. candles flickering, food catered from Mia's favorite Venezuelan restaurant downtown. As the small crowd mingled, Jackson stepped up and tapped his glass. "I used to think the smartest person in the room was the loudest." He began. "I was wrong. The smartest person in the room is the one who sees what no one else sees, because they've been forced to live in the margins." He turned to Mia. "You saw us. You saved us. And now you're teaching us how to see others." A quiet applause rose. Mia stood for a moment, hesitant, then stepped forward. "I didn't come here for applause," she said. "I came here to work. To do what I've always done: observe, listen, act. I just finally have the tools to make that work matter." She paused. "There are thousands like me. You just don't see them yet. But you will, because I'm going to make sure you do." Jackson raised his glass. "To the ones we never saw." Until now, they toasted. And for the first time in decades, Mia Delgado didn't feel like she was passing through someone else's story. She was writing her own. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Tellinight. At Tellinight, stories remind us that healing begins with hope, and even the gentlest kindness can rewrite a destiny. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss a story that could brighten your day or transform your perspective. Until our next story, keep your heart open and your spirit brave.